Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and today we've got one that I haven't really quite done yet. A pair of Florsheim Imperials in a boot style. So come join us and check out what we're doing for them today. So thank you for joining us, and like I mentioned, we're going to be working on these Florsheim Imperial Boots in particular. These ones, they still have the original Florsheim sole on them. It's got a little bit of that logo, but they've had heels done, and whoever did the heels, yikes. I don't know how they could have sanded it down that far that it actually got into welt and damaged it to that extent and everything, but we're going to be resoling these completely and recrafting them. So we're going to be replacing obviously the welt on these, and the gentleman wanted the Dainite soles on it. So that's what we're going to put on is Dainite. Now obviously a lot of people are going to be like, on Florsheim Imperials, these are in great shape, so I'm pretty sure this gentleman wears them, you know, fairly often at least. And so if Dainite soles are comfortable for him, then they're comfortable for him. So we're going to go ahead and get that taken care of. So let me go ahead and get everything set up here and readjust the camera angle and get started on these. Alright everyone, so I've taken apart the first boot already. I'm not going to quite show it yet, but I want to double check to make sure to see how everything is going. But man, that's just crazy. Just how far that's sanded down into the stitches and everything. But I'm going to go ahead and take this one apart and let you guys check it out and see how the process goes. First things first, gotta always sharpen up that knife. There we go. And go put this stone sharpener back real quick. Just want to get the knife sharpening out of the way real quick on that. So I'm basically going to go ahead and fast forward through a majority of all this, but in the beginning, and this is why I kind of wanted to take everything apart beforehand to let you see. So obviously we know that the heels were replaced on these before by someone else, and whoever did it shaved this entire heel base and sole and welt and everything down a fair amount. So I'm going to go ahead and just tear this guy off. Usually I'm trying to be a little bit cautious as far as like removing these heel bases, but this heel base unfortunately is a composite, or not composite, fiberboard material. I'm going to hang on to this heel just in case, set that aside, because I need to be able to determine the thickness of everything and all that kind of stuff just in case, but usually we determine angle anyways. But what I mean by fiberboard, this heel base right here, it's got basically plywood. It's the same equivalent, but instead of plywood they use ply paper or something like that, with maybe some particles and dust from leather and things like that. And so, you know, they can technically potentially call it leather because it's got leather fibers in there, but stuff is junk. And then to make it appear like it's actual leather, they had put a leather wrap on here. So let me pull this chunk off. Whoever did the heels on these before used just a tad bit extra glue, but you can see me separating all that. There we go. Just a heel wrap. It's just a wrap of leather. It is leather after all, but it looks like stacked leather basically, and that's what was on this thing. So you got the heel base and you got the leather wrap on there, and so that's why this is junk. Throw that out, and with the heel base, you're gonna watch this thing crumble. I mean, see, I'm just trying to barely lift it up. Some of those heel blocks and heel bases that are made out of similar material like this fiberboard stuff, they hold up fairly well when you pull them up. But this one, that's why I would really want to make sure, and I did the first one beforehand off camera. This one's just, look at that. Just look at that. Look at that. I was too much of that being played at the shop lately with that guy. Who was it? Chris Rock. Look at that. Look at that. Someone's always playing some kind of funny video or meme with him in the background saying that. But there you go. That is that nasty junk there. You can see all them layers there. So I wanted to show that real quick before I start the fast forward portion of it. But real quick before I start it, I'm going to explain it. So I'm going to continue taking the heel base off. We're going to have some nails sticking out that we're going to clip so we don't hurt ourselves. And then I'm going to put some thinning agent around the edges to deactivate the adhesive of the sole so that I can actually cut through the stitches and everything on the welt first. That way I can get access underneath, clean out all the cork underneath there, and then finally start undoing the welt. So I'll go ahead and do that in fast forward motion. So just sit back, enjoy, and hopefully a little music I'm going to play in the background. I'm not going to blast it or anything, but hopefully you like it. I don't know, I haven't actually asked, how do you guys like the music I've been playing on like my intro and everything? It's not classy or anything like that. It's some of the stuff that I thought it was kind of enjoyable, in other words, because we get some crazy stuff here at our shop, so we need a little more pumped up type of music usually with our stuff. I might not sound pumped up, but if you saw me in person, usually I am. On camera, I don't know what it is. I guess I sound boring. Do I sound boring? Let me know, comment down below. Also, before I start fast forwarding, if you haven't already, I guess I need to start trying to say this in the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell icon if you haven't already. And give us a thumbs up if you like this video at the end or beginning, whenever works, because apparently YouTube has some kind of formula where the more thumbs up we get, the more they're going to share the video, and the more the channel will grow. So definitely give us that thumbs up if you like this video. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, everyone. Whew. This one was much worse than the first boot, that's for sure. As you can tell, I look like an idiot struggling with this thing, but this boot has like this perfect combination of being like completely rotten at the same time as not rotten. It's hard to explain. Like the materials are starting to get to a point where they are rotting, but the adhesive, however, which is usually one of the first things that are supposed to go, is intact. So it's a nightmare trying to pull this thing apart. So let me just clip these nail heads right now, but don't worry, we'll still be taking them out because this is the midsole. But as you can see, this leather midsole right here, it's got an interesting little cut right there in the middle. They cut it out right there, so you have all that extra cork. That's pretty cool, where it has some extra padding, in other words. Very cool design to have, that's for sure, and in a midsole. I wonder if we can replicate that. Where did I put the other midsole? We should be able to replicate that with our midsoles as well. So, because we are after all going to be replacing that midsole, because who the heck leaves a midsole behind? I know, we've done it before too. There's sometimes those really odd jobs and that we get in where customer just wants to get them fixed, but they don't want to have the whole thing redone, or get that extra bit done to it that needs to be done. So yeah, but there you go, there's that paper there. Oof. Yeah, had a bunch of dust and stuff fly off of it, but you probably saw some of the chunks flying all over the place here and everything, so that kind of stuff happens there. So yeah, the other thing is, while I was cutting on this back end here, because of how worn down, how sanded down that back area was, it was very hard to get my knife to wedge under there properly to cut through the stitches, so I had to like wiggle and be careful about it all. So I thought I was gonna have to do some other kind of method for a second there, because again, the first one that I did off camera, that one was a lot easier. The second one, whole different story. Now my question, however, on this pair is, so these have the original sole. I don't know if the camera will catch. You can kind of make out the logo there, the Florsheim Imperial logo there. However, the interesting part about it, and it's also the original midsole, because Cobblers, we don't really get these. But, however, let me pull this off real quick and I'll show you underneath. Ooh, look at all that old nasty cork. There is a fiberglass shank in here. Like that. That's a fiberglass shank. And I've only ever seen Cobblers using these. I've never seen a factory like this using them. Now, I've seen them using different versions of the fiberglass shanks, but not ones like this. This particular fiberglass shank has a plastic wrapping around it, and so it's very interesting for me to see that on a pair of shoes like this. I mean, we see metal ones, we see wooden ones. Those are the most common ones. We see plastic ones as well, but a fiberglass shank that has the same design with the plastic wrap that goes around it to hold all the fiber structure together to this kind of extent in a factory shoe is unusual for me, at least. So yeah, I thought I'd point that out. But anyway, since we've gotten to this stopping point, I'm going to set these soles aside. Obviously I need to save those to trace out. I'm going to take out the insole real quick. One other thing that I haven't been seeing too much on the Florsheim Imperials. Ooh, there's a lot of fluff. I'm going to have to blow that off. It's going to get noisy real quick. I have to do the inside of the boot as well before I do much else. Get all that lint out of there and everything. We're going to clean it out some more a little bit later, but where was it? The rooster. I've only seen this a few times. The Florsheim Imperial logo, and above it is the rooster, which is kind of interesting. I don't know enough about the Florsheim Imperials as far as which which year or which makes or models may have had the rooster. I've seen it, but it's always been a big question to me. Like, I mean, I've seen it as in like I've seen it around, like I've bumped into it here and there, but I never paid close enough attention to say, oh yeah, that particular type of build or that particular model is the one that has the rooster, or that line has the rooster. So I thought it was interesting. So if any of you out there who know about the Florsheim Imperials, comment down below. There is also, I want to mention, a group on Facebook called Vintage Florsheim Enthusiasts, or Florsheim Enthusiasts, I believe. I think it's the Vintage Florsheim Enthusiasts. And it's not a huge group because obviously this brand is not as popular as, say, other brands out there. But there's still a handful of people. I think there's like a few thousand on there. And so if you like Florsheim Imperials, if you have a vintage pair, some of the old ones, definitely join that group. Show off what you got there. I mean, this is one of those shoes that you don't see much of anymore. Apparently they may have brought back the Imperial line, which is interesting because I had a gentleman bring in a pair that was like brand new, but it was the Imperial, and I can't remember where it was coming out of, which country it was made in, but it was kind of funny to see. So I may have to check out my pictures because I know I took some pictures of it and look back at it. So, but for the time being, you saw me put that little pad on the inside here. It's just a crepe material because we're going to be hammering these nail heads down in there so that I can reach in and pull them out the same direction they went in so they don't cause any kind of damage. And then we're going to clean out this cork here and start removing the welt itself on here. So let's go ahead and kick that fast forward back into motion and sit back, relax, and listen to the music play. Alright, so we've got majority of the cork out, at least on the edges, as good as we can at the moment. This cork that they used, it's great stuff. It's very similar to what we use, actually, it seems like. It's just that it's kind of gotten to the point where it's definitely time to replace it. This larger area here, I'm going to go ahead and take that to the sander real quick to get it out of the way. It's more in the center here, and once I get it all cleaned up, then we can go ahead and really start removing the welt and everything. And I'll talk about that before I actually start here in just a minute, about the construction of these guys. But for now, let's go ahead and get that cork out of there and get it out of the way. So I'll see you back here in just a few. Alright everyone, so I've sanded out majority of this, and obviously there are going to be little chunks behind. Once we get into the cleaning stages, a lot of that's going to really come out and fall apart a little bit better, but we have to take care of the welt first. And so before I really take it out, I want to be sure to explain a couple of details about a construction. Now these are Goodyear welted. They have what's called a split welt design on the edges here, meaning that you've got the leather here that the sole is stitched to, but then there's a little piece that comes up and kind of goes up a little bit higher. It's kind of preferred. There's another term also for that, people call it storm welt, and it's actually a little more prized when it comes to shoe constructions go, because it's a little more water resistant. In other words, it doesn't allow water to get in there as easily. Goodyear welted construction overall is kind of the ideal thing. Now, construction wise, and it's always a little hard to tell with all the layers, but you've got your base that starts out right here. This is your footbed, your insole, your kind of what your foot sits on basically right here. Typically it's leather, sometimes some companies that do cheaper work, they'll use a cardboard or fiberboard or something else, and it goes onto a last similar to this one, just not metal. Obviously, it goes onto either a wood, a composite, a plastic one, and then you start building the shoe around it and everything. This right here, this white felt looking material, it's what's called the gemming here, and that's glued to that midsole there. Once that's glued into place, it kind of wraps around up at a 90-degree angle here, and then that gets secured with these tiny little staples. Sometimes you might be able to see some of them, like this one here. As we start pulling the welt off, you start seeing more of those staples, but it's held in place temporarily with those staples. Then you've got your liner, you've got your heel counters on the back end, and on the toe end you've got counters, so it's like this little faint white line right here. Maybe you might be able to see it there. There's the liner, by the way. Sometimes you might see a layer of insulation or something else there, but not so much on this pair. And then finally you get your upper, which is your upper one we talk about is this right here. That's your leather upper, if you don't know what the proper terminology for that is. Then after the upper is where you have your welt. And the welt, you can see some of the stitching right there. That stitch goes all the way through the gemming here. That means it goes through all those layers and the gemming right there. And that kind of holds the boot and everything together, in other words. And by the way, you can maybe see some of these staples right there. There's one sticking out. They get a little sharp sometimes. They poke you all the time. But that kind of gives you a basic idea. After that's all stitched together, then you got the sole that gets glued on, and then the sole is stitched on. Before that, obviously, you fill it in with cork, get the shank, all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of the general construction of how things are put together on a Goodyear welted sole that's 360 degrees. Just wanted to point that out. So now at this point, we're ready to remove the welt and continue on. One other thing. Check out these cool aglets. Yep, that's what these are called. This is on the shoelace here. These little ends here are called aglets. It's a funny little name, but that is what they're called. They have nylon aglets, plastic aglets, 3D printed aglets. They've got these metal ones. So there's a lot of different variants of aglets out there, but I thought I'd point that one out. So let me go ahead and get started on removing the welt, and we're going to kick back into fast forward motion. And hopefully I don't have too much problems on this back end, but it doesn't seem like it. But you never know. When somebody else does some kind of work to a pair of shoes or boots and they do something weird, it's so unpredictable sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and just go with the flow and hope for the best that I don't come across any kind of issues. For taking it apart, I like to use one of these knives here. It's a little bit of a thinner blade compared to this one here. I'm not a big fan of this knife overall, but I can't find a new replacement for the one that I would typically use, and hopefully I'll find a new replacement sometime soon. So let's go ahead and get started then. Alright, so it kind of made a perfect timing because my camera overheated and everything. Yeah, it kind of sucks the cameras overheat. Wish I could grab me a new one, but for the time being, this one's getting by. So, yeah. A little bit of dust there. So we've got majority of the cork cleaned out and everything. Obviously, again, during the cleaning, we're gonna be able to clean out a lot more of this stuff. Man, little small dusts everywhere here and there in pockets. So now at this point, our goal is to, you can see there's little threads sticking out. This is left over from the welt that's been removed. Now the welt here, as I've mentioned, is this what's it called, split welt. Just spaced out there for a second, but that's what it kind of looks like. Let me maybe grab this other end or something, but it's kind of like that there, which I do have a piece here that I already cut out for these. Where did I put it? I lost it. I know I cut it out somewhere. Let me go locate that piece so I can show you guys. There we go. Found it. So this is a split welt. You can see right there that there's a split right here, and this little wall here goes up the side of the boot, in other words, and this area here gets stitched like that there. So that's a split welt for you. That's how this welt here that we took out started out. Now, for those of you who are wondering, the proper one for the storm welt is actually this right here. It's got that kind of beading on the inside, where a split welt is a little more low profile right there. So that's kind of the difference between the two. So the difference, I guess you can say, really is kind of heft. In other words, one is a little heftier than the other. Now these are obviously more of a dress shoe, so we don't really put too much of this version of storm welt on. We put on the split welt version, which looks, one, more original, and two, not as bulky. This one here, it's got that bead there again, and it looks a little bit more bulky once it goes on. But, you know, that's perfectly fine too. So, but for these ones, these are classic and everything. You gotta kind of make it look nice and beautiful and everything. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and use. Now this one, obviously, you can see it's a neutral. This one, however, has already an acrylic based finish on it. And these split welts, they usually come neutral like this anyway, so that you can actually dye it. And I'm gonna go ahead and dye this one. We've got a jar here with some dark brown dye. I'm going to dunk that in, but I'll do that a little bit later and then let it hang up to dry. And in the meantime, though, I'll let you check out how we remove the stitches. It's a very time-consuming, tedious process, which is very annoying, but if it's not done, it's a sloppy job, very sloppy. And I see that often actually in the cobbler industry, even in the recraft industry from the original factories. You know, they sometimes don't remove old stitches, which is a shame, basically. So we're going to show you the whole process, but we're going to fast forward it, obviously. Apparently I talk too much, I take way too long, and you guys just want to see the process sometimes. So just again, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Maybe you have a cup of coffee, maybe you have something a little bit stronger, maybe you're having a nice cigar. I know I wouldn't mind watching a nice video with a cigar. I'm a cigar enthusiast. You know, I know fair enough about cigars to know what I like and what I really like. In other words, I don't want to say that I dislike something. I do like cigars, so end of story. But just thought I'd throw that out there. Anyways, real quick, this is the tool I'll be using to pick. I just get in there and pick it out. The threads, I'm wondering if I can find a spot. There's one that's already sticking out right here. See right there? There is a thread that's sticking out. And once I've got a number of these all pulled up like that, I get in here with some little pliers and just pull it out. Just like that. That simple, but very tedious. Very tedious. Although it doesn't get so simple when you get to the toe here or the back of the heel, because the way everything's so tightly twisted and turned, sometimes it gets a little funky and takes some digging to try to really get it out, and I really try. So, you know, you might see me struggling on this back end just a little bit and on the toe area there. So let me go ahead and get started and enjoy. All right. Ooh, that took a little while. So we've got almost all the stitches out. So there's just a few spots which were so problematic that if I kept digging at them, I was going to cause more damage to that gimming than I would want to. And it's like on the back of the heel, you can see those white dots right there. And it's cut so close and everything there that if it sticks out, it's not going to be visible. But the other thing is, remember, we still got to stitch on a new welt. So what's going to happen is that the needle is going to end up pushing that thread out. So at that point, I could just grab it and pull it out of the way and just, yeah, dispose of it at that point. So we're going to be removing it regardless. It's just that it's a lot easier if I end up removing it whatever I can beforehand, and then worst case scenario, whatever can't be removed will come out one way or another. I have my trash can over here that I had to pull over earlier so I could toss these little threads, and I got some on the floor regardless, but it's a cobbler shop. What do you expect? You know, we got dirty floors and stuff. So now at this point, everything looks all good. We blew out the insides and everything. I am gonna go match up some boot trees real quick to these so that we can get these all cleaned up. And this is one of those things that I really like doing. It just makes me feel like that extra touch that no one sees, no one notices or anything like that unless you're watching my videos here. That I actually clean basically all of these the same exact method, and I'll show you here in just a second. So let me go grab what I need to. All right, so one of the things I like to do is I grab a desalting mixture that I like mixing up here at our shop. It's desalters, vinegars, white vinegars, some water to dilute it all, and some easy cleaner. It's like a whole mixture of a bunch of things that are very light cleaners, in other words, that aren't going to cause any kind of deactivation of adhesives, doesn't make any pigment or color or bleed or anything like that. So it's just one of those things that will deactivate all the minerals, the salts that absorb into the leather after a period of time, whether it's from your sweat and moisture that you perspire inside, or if it's from the outside elements such as rain. You know, here in Colorado they put out that salt to melt ice and snow. Well, when it rains, that stuff comes back up and leather loves to absorb it, and that's how you get those weird watermarks and stains. This one's got some light watermarking here. And then since I've got the sole off, I'm able to do it from the opposite side. So I'm going to start out by spraying the inside here. Grab my brush. Now I did blow this out with compressed air. You saw me a little bit. Maybe. I can't remember if I showed that on camera anymore. But I did it again anyways, just in case, to get any kind of lint or anything like that out. I'm going to try to reach down in there as deep down as I can. And that's kind of like your basic inside cleaning, in other words, to help deactivate a lot of those adhesives and stuff like that. Or adhesives, salts and minerals. That'd be bad if it was deactivating the adhesives. And if you want to know more about that in particular, you can check out my daily video that I posted a while ago about cleaning and treating the insides of shoes and boots. And you'll be able to check that out after this video if you'd like. That's fine. I'm not saying go watch it right now. But since I'll have so many links already down in the description, I'm not going to leave the link in the description down below for it. So just go check it out in the daily post section. And then, why am I sitting down? I'll be sitting down, otherwise I get this spray all over me. And then I'll smell like vinegar. No, your shoes and boots are not going to smell like vinegar forever. It's just for a short period of time. There we go. And the outside. And you saw me put the shoe tree in here, right? To help reduce the creasing while these are sitting here drying by quite a bit. Shoe and boot trees are very important always, but especially during this step, it's almost crucial. Now, some of you are saying, why aren't you taking out the laces? I did take them out of the first few holes. I don't like taking them out too much and then going back and forth with them, just because these laces also have aglets on them. You gotta remember that, those little metal pieces I was talking about. So they're a little bit wider, and sometimes they get caught up or something. Plus there are little metal rivets or eyelets here on the back, and they can scratch up the eyelets. So I don't want to take them out all the way. I want to reduce as much of that tension and friction as much as possible. So there we go. Now at this point I'll let this sit and dry. I'll do the same thing to the other boot real quick and let these sit and dry overnight. Air dry preferably. Sometimes when we do a Swedish bath is one thing that we have back there. We put them on special fans because Swedish bath is a little more intense, where this is more of a light cleaning, since we've got the sole off and everything, to really help remove those salts and minerals. Where with the Swedish bath, sometimes we have to do that so many times that we need it to dry a little bit quicker, where this one doesn't have, you know, a deep bath where we submerge in a solution. We're just spraying it down, and so overnight it'll be perfectly fine to sit and dry. So by tomorrow morning these will be already dry, and I'll be working on them anyways. So let me go ahead and take care of this one, and I'll see you back here in just a minute to get the dye going for that. I'll let you check that out at least. So see you back in just a few. Alright everyone, so we're back here again. This is dried overnight nicely, but it's very stiff. So at this point, because I don't want to introduce too much of other waxes, and my goal is to try to make sure I give a nice coat of pigment and everything, first things first, I got to try to clean off some of that chroming that comes through from the tannery. So I'm going to use some tannery spray. Stuff works great on vinyl materials, but it works very well to clean and do at least a light conditioning on things like this. And I'll show you real quick this here. You can see some of that green possibly showing up, and that's actually from all the tan just coming up like that. See, so you don't have brown, you actually have green coming up, and that's what we're cleaning off of here, and then restoring some of the suppleness back. Now usually the pre-made welts like this that already have color on them, they use an acrylic dye over top, and the acrylic just sits over top, where what we're doing is actually getting the dye to penetrate into the leather as much as possible, considering that it was in that jar for such a short time, and just keeps it that dark brown color for a longer period of time. Where with the acrylic ones, or with the acrylic finish at least, if you accidentally scratch your welt, that acrylic may come off just a little bit, and then you get this little light spot. Just like that. And if you need some of this tannery, again, it's great for car seat interiors. It's great for a number of synthetic materials too. We never really retailed it at our shop, but I'm actually going to start selling it and retailing it. So if you want it, you can check it out on our website, CobblersPlusCO, and grab yourself a can. Really comes in handy for some quick light cleaning or light condition. Again, it's not a strong conditioner, but it's just enough to give you that little extra bit sometimes if you're in a rush out the door or something. Now we're going to grab our Saphir Pomadier cream because it has a higher concentration of pigment in there. This is the dark brown number 5. And now we're going to introduce some of that shea butter into the leather, really amp up the conditioning. And the solvents in this cream, the pine-based turpentine, is going to allow us to actually really push that pigment through and give us a little bit of a wax coat for now, to make sure that this leather ends up being waterproofed and protected on this top area here, as well as give it a little bit of a shine too. Now, I did the other strap already off camera, and I'm letting it dry because I do want to let all this dry for at least a little bit, because afterwards I do have to let it sit and soak in some water so that when it comes time to stitch it, which we'll be doing here in a little bit, it's a lot easier and more flexible. Now I'm relying on the water to absorb into the leather from the bottom here and the sides here of where the split is, but as far as the top area, it's not going to absorb too much, so I got to make sure that it sits in that water for a good period of time and really soaks it in and becomes easy to work with. Otherwise, if I just try to put it straight on without having it sit in the water and become nice and soft for the application of it, it's going to crack on the tops here a little bit, and it's only going to crack just because it's going to be under so much tension from the thread and the sharp turns at the back heel and the toe area on these boots here. So right in these toe areas and the heel, there's so much of a turn that it may crack the finish, mainly not so much the leather, but mostly just the finish. And when you apply some water to everything here, it ends up being a little less resistance, at least if the leather ends up being moist somewhat. So at this point, we're done. We're gonna let that sit and dry for just a little bit, and then we'll be back in a few. Alright, so earlier my battery ended up dying before I could finish recording the whole stitching and everything, and kind of got out of hand. But at this point, we're now at the very end. We did overlap one of the last stitches over where the connection point is right there, and we got that all tightened down. And so now that I'm at the last stitch, it's a little bit different because I don't do the standard stitch. Make a large loop, I pull it, but I don't pull it all the way through like that. Get this one through the loop, and the goal is to pull the outside thread into the boot under the inside area here, so that I can put a nice knot in there if I can pull it through. There we go. Clip off some of the ends because it's just a little too long. At least for the time being, it's a little too long. And now I can finally put a knot in. This is really painful on the hands, and I've got a few other pairs here that I got to do the welts on. So there we go. We've got our knot in, clip that, and there we go. Now the welt's all stitched on. This connection point right here, obviously you can tell it's a little wonky looking at the moment, but once we're starting the whole gluing process and everything, we're going to be able to line it up and put a little adhesive there. It kind of makes it line up a little bit nicer and finished out. But That's that split welt for you. Looks a little more original. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and we'll be back here in just a few. Alright everyone, so we've got everything refilled with the cork. We've got the shank underneath here. Obviously you can't see it because it's underneath the cork. That's how it was originally on these. And let me take this guy out of the oven here. Now comes the part of making sure it all lines up as best as possible. Beautiful. Yeah, it's like a little window into the cork. Go ahead and do a little bit of hammering. Okay. Now see, obviously this little window for the cork, where we're gonna add another layer of cork basically inside here. Just gonna fill it in and everything. It's not something that's going to be visible. You know, the person who's going to wear them, he's not going to see it, but he's going to feel it at least, you know. And it's not something that you usually do a number of times. Most cobblers actually will just basically just put on a new midsole on there as is, and that's it. But considering that these are kind of an older pair and everything, and we've done new welts and all that kind of stuff, I kind of wanted to try to keep them as original as possible on these, short of obviously putting on a leather midsole and everything. We put on the composite sole. Some people ask, why don't you put the leather one on? Well, if the gentleman is going to be wearing these in rougher conditions, which if he's putting a Dainite sole, in most cases that is the case, then obviously I try to put on a composite sole, because the midsoles, they still absorb moisture, and if you don't reapply a new finish or anything on the edges, it can end up degrading a little bit quicker than the composite sole will as well. The other thing is it's going to work a lot better in combination with this little window here that we have, especially where if we did a leather version, it can be done, but that transition of material density may affect the feel quite a bit. Even though there's cork already here, you know, the leather is a little bit denser material, where the rubber here is a little bit still forgiving, in other words, because this composite rubber material is just that much softer, in other words, than leather in particular. But the midsole is going to be a must, definitely, because we have a Dainite sole going on, and if we just put the Dainite sole on, it's just a little bit too flexible and too soft, in other words. That was a strand of glue across my camera. Must have been stuck to one of the midsoles, and it kind of came across, and it's just like this little strand, kind of like that. Doubt the camera can catch it, but it's there. I know it's there. Anyways, I'm going to go run this over to the welt press and everything, press out the welt area here, and then get ready to fill up this cork area here, and then finally we're ready for the Dainite sole. So I'll be back in just a few, and get the other one also going. I gotta throw it in the oven actually, which reminds me. So I'll be back in just a minute basically. Alright everyone, so we've got this one all stitched up here, as well as the other boot. But even though we changed out the welt on here, I know one of the things that some people may be familiar with, that the tighter the stitch is, so basically the narrower it is, the more high quality it basically shows in. We could have done that on these. However, because this is, after all, a rubber sole, when you make the stitches just way too narrow and way too tight, kind of like, I'll show you on here real quick. This was a bad experiment one, but you can see there's a little bit of a wider stitch there. And then, even though it kind of turned out choppy because of the paint, this was fine-tuning the machine. But the stitches get a little bit narrower right there. That's usually done on shoes that have a leather sole, because that more dense material can withstand it, where rubber is softer after all. So about a medium to a wide stitch is what has to be done on a rubber sole, and I really wanted to make sure to point that out. I was really tempted wanting to do as narrow of a stitch as I possibly can on these, but it ended up ripping through that rubber pretty badly. So made sure to do about a medium kind of stitch, nothing too wide, and I think it looks pretty nice. I like that orange there. The orange is not too subtle, but at the same time doesn't pop out like crazy, like if it was a yellow or a red, for example. So definitely wanted to keep it at least somewhat neutral there. But at this point, we've got this one all stitched up. Get ready to glue on the JR heel base that I've been working on. It's just a leather that we're going to be layering over top, because again, those heel bases were done for. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this all up, and see you back in just a few. Alright everyone, so I've got the heel bases on these guys here. Got the JR leather piece right there, and then we've got the Dainites on. I did already nail them from the inside right there for the heel base itself, and now we're going to nail the JR top lift on. So I'm just going to do this in kind of fast forward type of thing, so you're not having to listen to me hammer too loudly or anything like that. It's just basic nailing. For any of you that might be wondering, this here is what's called a punch tool. So after I hammer the nails in, I still need to push them down further. So this punch will allow that to happen. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy. So we are finished with these. So we've got the edging taken care of on there. So looking all nice. Got that new welt, the stitching there. We've got the bottom stitching, the heels. And as far as the tops, because these are not a fully finished leather, they're kind of like they're not rough or anything like that. They're just a little bit on the softer side, so they're not quite like a nubuck or a suede or anything like that, but they're still somewhat finished leather. So in that case, I don't want to use anything like a renovator that has some of the stronger conditioning agents in there. I use the Saphir Medalgio Napa cream. It's kind of like the delicate version and the Medalgio version there. So that's what I used for the uppers, buffed them up a little bit and got them all situated. And then tie up the laces. Did I mention that these things right here, these metal pieces, are called aglets? I like them. I don't know. Some people think they're a little much, but I kind of like them. They just have some kind of pleasing aesthetics to me, at least. So do our berluti knot there. These are kind of short laces though to be able to do a berluti knot on these, so I think a regular knot might be best on it. But there we go. That's how a pair of Florsheim Imperials are recrafted with new welts, midsole, Dainite soles, new JR top lift heel JR leather heel base, and Dainite top lifts on there. So there you go. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. But in the meantime, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell icon to be notified about future videos that pop up and projects that we do, as well as testing. Like currently I've got a pair of Red Wing boots on that have the one shoe has the Dainite sole and the other one has a Vibram Eaton sole, and I'm doing a test on them. So those will be posted every other week about updates of how they're wearing and everything like that. So be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell icon. If you like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up, because apparently YouTube has certain analytics. The more thumbs up, the better the channel grows and everything. So definitely hit that thumbs up button. And if you have any details or information you want to check out as well, you can go to our website, CobblersPlusCO, and we'd be happy to help however we can with that. And otherwise, you could just comment. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.